Welcome to the Metaphysics Hour. I'm your host, Rory Colgan. Thanks for tuning in. You know, one of the things I love to do in this channel is educate and share ideas about metaphysics. And if you haven't listened to a lot of my earlier videos when I really went in deep dive with each of the universal laws, metaphysics is basically just the study of mind beyond the physical. It studies the physical for the effect, but not necessarily for the cause. And so one of the universal laws is cause and effect. That thought is the cause of everything, and the physical is just manifest into its likeness. And you can get into quantum physics with that, and chemistry, and things of that nature. But I tend to stick to metaphysical topics that are about the relationship you have with yourself and the relationship you have with others. Look at anything I'm wearing. This was all thought of before it came to be. And the body I'm in, my parents thought about this before they brought me into the world. Metaphysics basically just explains why everything is the way it is. And so if you're curious about the universal laws, check out some of my older videos. The quality might be a little off. You know, it's not as good as what I'm capable of producing nowadays, but it still is the essence of metaphysics, as far as I understand it, practice it, and teach it. Today I wanted to share with you the complexity of self in an analogy form that really recently just helped kind of unlock relationships, or specifically for me, helped unlock an aspect of my romantic relationship. I think it has value for you. Let me know in the comments if it does. We all know people can be complex. And depending upon who you have in your life, you might think that that's the norm or that's the rarity. There might only be one or two people that are complex that you never really know much about. And maybe everybody else is predictable and knowable. Or you might be in the flip side, where almost everybody is complex and there's only a few people that are predictable. Predictability is a value. It creates stability. If you have a worker that can show up on time every day and doesn't call in sick, that's predictable. That does not mean that person's not complex. It just means that as far as it comes to dependability and accountability, they're on point. They're dependable, or they can manifest in that way. But if you show up for 100 days at work, each day, even that dependable character is going to be slightly different. They're going to have different things digesting in their stomach. They're going to have woken up at probably a slightly different time. They're going to feel different as far as their body, their immune system, if they've had orgasms recently, if they've had sex recently, if they've masturbated recently, if they've gotten over a sickness recently, if they ate really well this morning and didn't eat well last night, if they're on a fast, if they're eating the same thing in the breakfast today that they have for the last 100 days. That's a person that is very dependable, even down to their dietary choices. That still does not mean that they are any more or less complex than any other person. You would almost have to think that the complexity of an individual is only something that happens when people are hard to understand or they do things that create problems. But that's not the case. Complexity is our nature as human beings, because spiritually speaking, from a metaphysical level, we are more than what these bodies showcase. We are more than these genetics that were passed on from our mother and our father. We are God's children, and so therefore our very essence is unknowable. Our very essence is eternal, immutable, and all that is, essentially. What that means in daily interactions is that you are dealing with an incarnation of God every time you deal with a person. Every time you deal with a plant, every time you deal with an animal, it's a different manifestation of the divine principle of all of life. That's the theory, that's the basis for what I'm about to tell you. Look at each person as 100 different people in the same room. Now, when you put 100 people in the same room, you're going to have differences. You're going to have different preferences, different dispositions, different temperaments, different hobbies, different interests. And that's if they're all speaking the same language. And some of us out there, we might be really knowledgeable about 5 to 10 parts of ourselves. 5 to 10 people know each other in this group of 100, but the others might speak a different language, and we might be completely unaware that those parts of self even exist. So if you can look at each person, yourself included, as having 100 different distinct aspects of yourself, that means that when situations go in their unique configurations, that one of those 100 or a number of those 100 are going to be activated, and some of them are probably not going to be that activated. Just as you look at a painting and you find it beautiful. You look at another painting and it does nothing for you. Those 100 aspects of yourself are still telling you something, but it's telling you something different. To get in touch with yourself, you have to realize that on every given moment, there might be a different part of you kind of leading and living life. And so this is why certain people, you give them a pass, and other people you can't stand, because there's some representation of them, something about them that you can't stand in yourself. It also might be that you actually don't respect or like the things that they are doing or saying, and that's a different aspect of consideration. But the real point to me is that inside yourself is everything that you hate about the world and everything you love about it. In other words, we walk around projecting ourselves onto this universe, molding the universe in our image. So if you can control the 100 aspects and direct the 100 aspects and care for the 100 aspects within yourself, if you can create harmony within the 100 different parts of yourself that have different dispositions, different desires, and make them feel loved and welcomed and heard and appreciated and redirected when necessary by the group of the wiser aspects, then you can create heaven on earth within yourself. And that is only going to be a positive influence on the next person you meet, who has also 100-fold, and the person after that you meet, who is also 100-fold. All people are complex, and to think that any one of them is not as complex as you is a disservice and dishonest. To think any one of them is more complex than you is a disservice and dishonest. We're all created equal in the image of the Creator. That's another metaphysical principle. It's called the universal law of divine birthright. And it says you have been given free will and existence. Those two fundamental principles mean that every person has been given the same existence. That does not mean we show up the same way. Some people are 5 feet 8, some people are 5'11", some people are 6'4", some people are 5'3". Some people are black, brown, cream, white, tan, olive, whatever color your disposition is. Those are unique qualities to yourself. Your body is unique to you. Nobody's exactly like you. Even identical twins are slightly different. They might have a similar genetic code, but they are different entities, different beings. Knowing that you are unique and also intimately special, but that there is nothing in life that is less special or more special, creates a great field for humility, and it ends things like racism, sexism, bigotry, just any of the isms that exist can only exist in an egoic shape when individuals believe they are either more or less, when they believe that something else is either more or less. When you walk around and when you interact with your loved ones, strangers, whoever, think of them as complex individuals. Think of them as at least having 100 aspects of themselves. And in interaction, especially the voluntary relationships or the marriages, the relationships, the friendships, the children, parents, I mean, they are somewhat voluntary. I would say they are voluntary, because you can walk away. You would just probably go to prison. But I mean, point is, relationships, whether there are people you work with that you didn't really choose to work with, but they are who you work with, or the people you spend time with outside of work, there's some choice there, regardless of whether you think that you chose that person or they just happened to be in your environment. Understand that they're complex, and the more you get to know them, the more you get to know yourself, and vice versa. I think if an individual does this and starts to look at human beings as complex, we can end a lot of the pain and suffering and the disconnect between us. Because we're more than whatever irritates us about each other, and we're more than what we love about one another. There's something so deep and so profound that I could not even describe it, even if I knew the right words. And that's a beautiful mystery that you can only really feel. You can't process that logically. You can go into your consciousness and transcend the logical brain and have some profound insights into what I'm talking about. But I'll leave it there. Again, like, subscribe, pass this on to your friends or family if you think that it's useful. And if you have specific questions about techniques to appreciate the 100 aspects of the self, hit me up. Love you guys. God bless. Namaste.